Listen up, here's a story about a podcast group. They keep it real, they keep it strange, they never blue. Joe, Jen, and Ben, the host you gotta know. They dive into the weirdness, they never slow. Conspiracies, craziness, they bring it all. From UFOs to Bigfoot, they have a ball. They got the best guests, they go above the rest. You gotta tune in, join the weirdness fest. Get real with legit Bat, don't you miss a beat. From the intro to the outro, they can't be beat. Come get strange, leave a 5-star review. Legit Bat's the podcast for the true weirdo crew.
Hey.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Testing.
Testing?
Testes?
Testes? 1, 2, 3?
Boner.
I don't know shit about fuck.
Fucker. I like sucking, but I ain't gay.
Legit Bat Podcast.
Fuck those honkies.
Big ass.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
He really knows how to suck a wiener.
Welcome back to Legit Bat. I'm Joe. Jen is here with me. Ben is also here. I will forego the gay talk because I've beat that dead horse enough the last couple times.
Sound drop.
Today is me and Jen's anniversary. Yay! And that's from our president, yes.
Happy birthday, dear Velvet.
That's for my son, actually. This is his 12th birthday this week, too, so good for him. If this is your first time listening, I'm sorry. You're in for some shit. And our guest tonight, so everybody's heard us. Everybody knows that we love Mysterious Universe, one of my favorite shows, thanks to Jen for introducing them to me. And I've been a paid sub of theirs for like a decade now. Listen to almost every fucking episode they've ever done. And every time they cover something, I don't care what they're talking about, I will listen to it, even if I don't care or don't agree or whatever. So this one popped out to me a couple months ago, month or two ago. And the funny part is, if you know that show, you know Ben Grundy is a complete asshole sometimes. And
No, he's not.
No,
He's
but in
just
a
kidding.
funny way.
Yeah, he's just a jokester.
So he's talking about this chick that he found, this cute brown lesbian feminist occultist named Alicen Gray that has a Substack, and one of her articles caught his eye, and it was right up our alley. Come to find out, she not only does what they were covering, but a lot of other stuff too. So you can find her work at Alicen-Grey, Grey.com, and it's Alicen, Alicen.
Yeah,
having to
like
spell that out in my
Alicen, the
head.
gray area.
Yeah, and she does all kinds of different stuff, magic, occult, and so what caught my eye, or my ear actually, was the talk of the cathedral stuff that Ben was covering on the show. So why don't you introduce yourself in that kind of area, and we can go wherever from there.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Alicen Gray. I talk about spirituality, metaphysics, mysticism, magic with a K, I should distinguish. I'm really fascinated with ideology, the way the mind works, how belief plays a role in the human experience of reality. And so that's what I devote my time to writing about. And so in the case of this cathedrals article that you mentioned, I was just openly contemplating how the architecture that we have around us is a reflection of the state of humanity's soul collectively. And so what does it say about us that we used to have these grand, opulent buildings, and now we have like Walmart and parking lots everywhere and like streets made of asphalt, you know? So I was just kind of contemplating why we lost so much beauty, and not just beauty, but everything that goes into making the world beautiful, you know, sustained willpower, that the sustained willpower it takes to build something that grand and long lasting. Like, why don't humans apply ourselves the way that we used to? What happened to us spiritually? There are conspiracies about like the old world and how there was a great forgetting in humanity. So we used to have way more advanced technology in order to build buildings like that, among other things. And like people have this erroneous idea that where we are right now is how like the most evolved humans have ever been. But just looking back on the old world architecture, just that one factor makes me think, no way we're evolving forward. I have too many questions about why everything started taking a turn for the worse.
Yeah, and we love that too. That's one of Ben's favorites, is the 1800s, or even before that, the so-called Dark Ages, when you have all these opulent buildings that you cannot even reproduce now. Like you were saying, now we have Walmart. I mean, even just to throw it back to a meme, like there's a McDonald's from like the 70s, and it's this cool, fun looking building for kids or whatever. You see the McDonald's now, and it is depressing. They're black and gray boxes. And I actually went into a McDonald's the other day, and it is dystopian as fuck now. You go in there, there's first of all, nobody is in there. There's no employees. There's a counter with no menu, nothing, and there's just 3 kiosks where you order.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
all electronic
weird.
now. Hey, even the homes have changed, because if you look at a home that was built a long time ago, there's a staircase with a banister and all of these ornate decorations, just from like on the walls and things like that. And now
Hand
it's
carved,
just
yeah.
and now it's just boxes of cookie cutters, same house, and even the color schemes are not anything special. They're going to like grays, browns, whites, all these dull colors.
All the neutral,
Like the
like,
dulling down of society.
minimalist. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to have so much, like, my mom would always go down, like the old streets. She'd be like, all these these homes have so much character. It was like when you would drive down the street, you knew exactly where you were on the street by the house that was, on the side or something, because everything had character. They had vibrant colors. Like you said, the staircase, it was like, oh yeah, that one with the staircase. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like every home had a little bit of the owner inside the home. You knew exactly where you were at.
And that was another thing that caught my ear at the beginning, is what you were saying. We've become retarded by the definition of the word. And I love that word. I'm bringing it back.
What up, retarded faggots?
And faggots. I'm bringing that back too. But yeah, by the definition of the word retarded, we've become slowed down, degraded. There's something weird going on. So do you have any ideas as to why that is? Or is it just because we are dumbed down now with Rockefeller education? Or is it something more than that?
Oh man, I've been asking this question a lot lately, trying to figure out exactly what happened that put us on this timeline of degradation. Because like I am also a musician, and the artist name I chose for myself is When Humans Had Wings, because I believe not only did we have a more beautiful world and have more beautiful creations and advanced technology, but we also were very spiritually empowered. It seems to me when I look at like ancient religious and spiritual texts that it was just common knowledge and casual conversation to talk about humans levitating, humans doing telekinesis, all the psionic abilities. I'm obsessed with learning about this stuff. It used to be something you could talk about without, I guess, your life being threatened. And now if you try to talk about these things, oh my God, the defenses I experience from people are just so automatic, so knee-jerk, that I would actually go as far as to say humans have been deeply traumatized by whatever it was that happened in our past that made us forget our original power and what the world used to be like. The way people are like trauma bonded to their disempowerment. I can't say why I think it happened, but I know that the reason we're not returning to our power is because there's a degree of consent, there's a degree of choosing to stay in this disempowered state. I think most people, the choice is unconscious for them. So like I can have like some grace towards them. I don't mean to sound condemning when I talk about how people, are so disempowered these days. But then there's also like religious factors of like, keeping people in a submissive state. There's like the slow kill of like the pharmaceutical industry, like just programming people to put the ability to heal themselves into an external source and never finding the healing within themselves. There's so many factors. I could talk in a million directions about this, actually.
Yeah, and do you think it's something more than just people, forgetting or whatever? It seems like there's a big spell over everybody on purpose where I don't know what other words to use, but a huge spell cast, like a shadow or a bubble cast over people that are just not only forget, but they don't want to remember. And it's like some Harry Potter shit, where they're just kind of in a don't care, just fucking want to watch
humans
football.
got too powerful and we got grounded by some higher being. They were like, no, you don't get to know this for this many, you have to be in your room for 5 days or whatever. I don't know.
Behind a school desk.
I've never heard that possibility. Yeah, it could be like vengeful gods feeling threatened by humanity awakening. That's like a very Promethean, very like theory. I do feel there is a spell for sure. I do think we're in a spiritual war. And so the dark occultists, they know that the only way to make a free, sovereign, spiritual, divine human obey somebody else is to trick them into like freely consenting to that. Because like if humans knew how powerful we were, we just wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't have people putting on masks because the Hypno TV told them to. Like there's so many little ways in which we just acquiesce authority for no reason. Like and when you call it out, when you ask people, okay, like when did it start making sense in your brain that in order to freely roam your home planet, you have to put fabric over your mouth? When did that start making sense to you? And when you call that out and just like shine a light on it, people get angry. And I think it's because on some level they know the reason they're beaten down is because they're agreeing to be in that position. No one can force you to act like a domesticated slave. So there's some tough conversations about shadow work to have around why humans don't fly anymore.
Do you think that as a result of the Hypno TV telling people to put face diapers on, that in a way that spell is really getting tested now? Because it seems like in the last several years since that broke out, it was almost like, uh they broke it too fast, to like they overestimated their plan, and now everybody's like, well, hold on a second, like you guys fucked with the spell a little too much, and now we're aware of it. Do you think that that is now playing a part as to why there's so much more talk about it now than there was even like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I do think there was an element of them getting too confident and overplaying their hand. But it also there was a train of thought that I almost had there and I lost it. So I'll go in a different direction. It did feel like 2020 was a timeline bifurcation where to some degree, again, because these are shadow magicians, like, and this happens to be my area of expertise, like magic. The way that lesser magic works, and so I'll differentiate for anyone who doesn't know. There's greater magic, which is where a magician affects reality by using their own power. But then there's lesser magic, which you could call parasitic magic. It's a kind of magic engaged in either when a magician doesn't have power of their own, so they're like sort of like a vampire in the human form, or when they just don't feel like using their own power and using their own concentration to make something happen. So lesser magic is when a magician gets other people to bring their desire into reality by getting them to participate in rituals that they don't know they're participating in, tricking them into using their free will in service of the magician's desire. So that's how you, the way that it works though is the person unwittingly, subconsciously playing into the magician's hand has to, on some level, consent. They have to know what's being done. So think about all the little ways we were told explicitly during the COVID brainwashing era that we were being duped. Like even, I remember when they had the first vaccination, they made a big ritual of it on TV. They vaccinated a man called William Shakespeare. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the first televised vaccination was a man named William Shakespeare. All the world's a play, all the world's a stage or whatever. Like they have to disclose that they're pulling you into a magical ritual. And so if after you've been told that's what this is, even if it's covertly, technically you're still consenting by participating. And so there's theories that makes the magician free of the negative karma of tricking people because, oh, well, they consented to it. But it's a little more complicated than that. But basically, yeah, that's one way a shadow occultist can get people to create the world they want. So that's also the mechanism behind predictive programming. It's not, I see a lot of people saying predictive programming is, oh, the elites telling us what they have planned. But I actually have come to see it as they know that we have creative power. And so in order to create certain disasters and other traumatic events that they can then feed on our emotional distress, they plant the imagery of apocalypse scenarios into our minds in a hypnotic way. So it goes straight into our subconscious awareness. And that's the place where we manifest from. So if something is in the subconscious, we are like effortlessly manifesting it on their behalf. So the more you sit in front of the TV and watch like zombie movies or like, Mad Max type of movies, like anything where humans are suffering en masse and humans are fighting to survive and humans are like killing each other and it's like just devastating and traumatic, the more you watch that, the more you're actually becoming the generator of that reality on their behalf, which is why I know it's very tempting for a lot of people to watch that stuff just so they can like analyze it and say, look, they're saying this is going to happen in 2030, and like, you know, there's kind of a drama and a thrill to like freaking out about it together in the truther community. But I personally just abstain from watching any of that shit because I don't want to even accidentally become an agent in their agendas, you know?
Yeah, and just to clarify, a lot of people will say, well, that's all bullshit, you know, the occult stuff, like who cares what they believe in? Well, that's the thing, is that it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. They 100% do, and it works to some degree because look where we're at. They're
Yes.
pulling some kind of string, so whether you believe in it or not, they're actively pursuing this methodology. So
I think
at
it's
least pay
worse to
attention.
ignore it. Yeah, if you're just completely ignorant to it, they have way more control over you.
Yeah, and that's why they expend so many resources into just making any sort of spirituality laughable. Like there's so much like I guess you could call it like anti-God rhetoric being pushed in the mainstream. You know, I understand like the belief in God is like way more nuanced, and I don't have time to like address like what is God? Does God exist? But I mean, there's like a push to encourage people to dismiss anything that they call woo-woo and like dismiss any semblance of there being metaphysical layers to reality, and or to put what we call metaphysical into purely hylic or material terms. So instead of dreams being a journey through the astral or a journey into parallel universes, which I have stories about I would love to share with you, because dreams are not just movies in your head that are like isolated individual experiences.
Oh my God, I have these stories too. Okay, I can't wait for
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Oh, I can't wait. They want everyone to believe dreams are just, oh, your brain processing information from the day and it means nothing. It's just like gobbledygook. But even I mean, I have so many stories, but even just a few days ago, I had a dream about a guy who I'd never seen before. And the next day I went into a restaurant and he was the host of the restaurant. I was flipping out. I mean, and this has been happening all my life. That's why I've become very invested in dream work. I really love to pay attention to my dreams and make note of like patterns that I notice, messages I receive. And I have so many uncanny stories like that make me believe, like from firsthand experience, which is the important thing. Like, don't just believe it because I'm saying it charismatically. Like, anyone can test this stuff. Anyone can set an intention before they go to sleep to say, I want to see the potential the dreams have. Like, I want to know, can I have a precognitive dream? Can I astral project to another place? Can I meet someone I've never met before and then find them in real life? Like, these are things you can set the intention to do and then actually experience. And that's a big part of my work as well. I am always encouraging people to stop rationalizing the metaphysical stuff and actually start experimenting and experiencing it through your body, through your own senses, because at the end of the day, nobody can like persuade you into understanding the truth. Truth is not a rational experience. Truth is a lived experience. And so I want more people getting out there and playing with lucid dreams and telekinesis and stuff.
Yeah, and so like what you're saying with how anything spiritual or God or, you know, is kind of, oh, that's woo woo, blah blah blah, you know, materialism, science, trust the science, all that. At the same time, there's this push for a certain type of spirituality, and you can call it new age, you can call it whatever you want, but and you know who I'm talking about. The spiritual life coach people on Instagram that are, oh, come to my retreat, and you know, you can totally leave your clothes on if you want, but
Also, it's $10,000.
yeah, but certain verbiage they use. Somebody called me out on Instagram for a fucking meme I posted that said spirit. And I'm like, I didn't even write this fucking meme, first of all. I just like the idea of it. He's like, spirit is a real new age term, and that can mean anything. It's androgynous and blah, blah, blah. It's a new age thing. Watch out for that. I'm like,
You
dude,
can't
I
get
get
too
it.
caught up in that
I get
either,
it.
though. You can't, yeah. Ugh, I don't know.
But yeah, so there does seem to be a certain form of spirituality that's more promoted than others, but it's kind of shallow and bland. Like we touched on the white girl astrology thing. There's so much more to astrology than the horoscope in the newspaper. That's the stupidest shit you're ever going to read, and it means nothing. If you actually look into natal charts and all that stuff, it all makes scary, creepy sense in how close it is, and it's not vague stuff. It's very pointed specific
And
things.
I looked into the nakshatra stuff that you were talking about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was obsessed with it for like a week. Every day I was like reading everything about it. Turns out we're a terrible star match or whatever.
Oh no.
So, but mine was very specific. It said, I read probably every single, what are there, 27 or something?
Yeah.
So I read all of them, and mine was saying you'll experience different job changes at these particular points in your life, and every single one was spot on. Every single year I was like, and it was like 7 different ages. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I don't know, it was very, very interesting. We can talk about that later if you want also.
Oh yeah, I could talk about astrology forever. That's another thing I'm on a crusade to like help people understand. It's not I mean, of course it has the potential to be surface level. Anything could be surface level until you look deeper. Anything can be a mystery of the universe if you want. Like you can dive deep on astrology and be learning about it forever and never complete your studies. It's you can do that with magic. You can do that with dreams. Like there's no end to what you can discover about these things, and it's just such a shame that people stop short at the surface level. I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in. And to quickly answer what you said about the New Age, something I've written very critically of about the New Age is the emphasis on meeting your spirit guides. I think there is a straight up demonic component to the New Age, and I don't even mean that as like a Bible beating Christian or anything. I mean there are entities who benefit from making soul contracts look like light and fun, like
And not to like make fun of some of these new age people. I think some of them actually have no idea. It's like accidental demonic shit where they're like, no, I met these spirit guides, when really they're low level entities that are just like sucking whatever they want, whatever that is out of you.
It's the wolf in sheep's clothing thing. It's why they come as, different things that are now very, very popular. 5 years ago, well, maybe not 5 years ago, but not very long ago, if you said something about aliens, you would have gotten laughed out of town. And now everybody's like, oh no, like you see it all over, like you were saying, the movies and stuff. No, they're here to help us. They're here to give us the all ending language and the key to life and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, half the time that's just fucking low level entities posing as aliens so that you can get your rocks off on saying you had an abduction experience.
Oh man, I have so much to say about that. Like there's I read about I'm forgetting her name now, but she was a very important researcher of abductee recovered memories, and she had this method she would use to like, induce hypnosis in a person so that they would be relaxed enough for the memories to start coming forward, so they'd be narrating what they were seeing in the
Regression
recovered
therapy?
memory. Thank you. Yeah, regression therapy. So she'd be doing regression therapy with abductees, and at first, the first go round, they would say things like, "Oh, they gave me a healing, and it felt so warm and fuzzy," and they'd be describing this very positive experience. And then she'd take them through the session again, but she'd say, "This time, may only the truth come forward." And then people would be saying, "Oh my God, I'm being sliced open with scalpels. Oh my God, I'm being raped. Oh my God." And then they would be saying these terrible, awful, torturous things about what the aliens were actually doing to them. So the aliens had some sort of either technology or occulted spiritual, what's the word I'm looking for? Protocol, where they would cover a person's true memory of what happened with almost like a holographic insert.
Screen
So
memory, I think they call it.
Screen memory. Yeah. So then when you've got these like spirit guides, or as they call themselves, saying, "Oh, I want to help you on your journey. Let me heal you. Let me just hang around in your energy field. Let me just like talk to you in your dreams or in your meditations." People are so easily impressed with that, and people feel very special when that happens. But I have seen people devolve into very real, very damaging psychosis from getting involved with these beings. I know a woman right now who we used to be like best friends, and she started talking with Sekhmet, the bloodthirsty Egyptian goddess. And of course, there was always some explanation of like, no, she's not actually bloodthirsty. That's the patriarchy misrepresenting her, and like, stuff like that. So then, she's actually a feminist and a mother trying to like help her daughters recover our witchy power or some shit like that. And then Sekhmet started like progressively telling this person, more and more insane shit like, oh, your family is actually part of a satanic network trying to like kill you. You need to leave their house. You need to cut contact with them. And ultimately it ended up with her on the street, like afraid to live in a house, afraid to drive a car because she thinks there's trackers in everything, in every wall, in every car. So she rides a bicycle everywhere and like lives on the street voluntarily because Sekhmet
That's like
kind of
induced
told her to.
schizophrenia. That's
Yes.
crazy. Are you talking
Yeah.
about the lady you were talking about? Was that Jenny Randalls that did the?
No, this was a friend of mine. I don't know
Oh,
who.
okay.
No, talking about. Are you talking about the one who did the hypnotherapy?
The hypnotherapy
the
thing. Yeah, I don't remember.
regressions.
There's a couple of them that have done I don't remember all their names either, but I do
But
want
this
to
is
do.
kind of common, like entities making people progressively more insane. And I just want to say before we move on to something else that like if people knew how powerful they were, it wouldn't impress them when like Lilith wants to talk to you or like Lucifer wants to talk to you or whoever people are working with. I think they would just be like, I'm powerful enough to
busy.
find, yeah. Yeah, that. Or like I'm powerful enough and I trust myself enough to find the answers within. I don't need to be fed information by some self-posturing authority, right? Like just because they're not embodied doesn't automatically mean they know more or that they're
Or
more
that they're good.
powerful or that they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, even the Bible, like we get into the Bible crosses over with a lot of this stuff, and it does have a lot of good advice for these kinds of things. And one of the things that always stand out to me is the Bible never says there's no other spirits, there's no other anything. All it says is try them, try the spirits,
Yes.
test them, ask them questions, and be like, who the fuck are you? The Bible doesn't say that. That's Joe talking, but. Try the spirits. Ask them what's your goal. Like, what are you doing here? Why are you talking to me? And if they start doing the whole oh, we're here to help you and red flag automatically. Like, I'm
Mhm.
good actually. Why are you here right now? Like, why
Yeah,
are
and
you in my bedroom?
the spirits who do genuinely intervene in a benevolent way with humans do so in a way where they're not seeking credit and they're not seeking an ongoing relationship with you. Like a truly powerful multidimensional being doesn't need to be in a relationship with a human. Like they gain nothing from that. So in my experience when I've been helped because I have definitely felt the presence of like guardians in my life and I have a lot of stories throughout my life of times when something was about to go catastrophically wrong, and at the last second, I could almost feel the fabric of reality being like untangled and like set straight at the last second. Like I know something is looking out for me, but whenever I've tried to like talk to whatever guardians I may have, I get no answer because they don't do it for recognition. They don't want me to know who they are. Like there's nothing in it for them. They're not looking to gain something from me. So I think that's another important thing for people to understand. Like the moment a spirit is like posturing like, oh, I'm this ancient million-year-old spirit and I trace back to Babylon and I'm so powerful, like that's the biggest red flag. Like because
It sounds like the Nigerian prince scam where they're like, only you can help me. I'm here for you. I'll give you all this money.
That's exactly what they do. But
exactly.
MU covers this all the time. And it always has, you can always tell when it's these low level things because they'll send you on a wild goose chase and it ruins these people. They'll be like, it'll start out seeming very legit and they're like, oh, this matches up with this or this Bible verse or oh my God, this is Archangel Michael or whatever. You'd be surprised how many people Michael visits. For how busy that guy must be, he visits a lot of people. And they'll get sent on these wild goose chases all over the world. And at the end, nothing comes of it. And they die broke and sad and everything. And you're like, that, not that they should have known, but now we have these stories to look at to be like, these are like cautionary tales. Don't
Yeah.
just follow these random entities just because they say they're like you said some ancient Egyptian
Well,
spirit or whatever.
And the commonality is that most of the time it starts out with very, very, or really close to logical degradation. Like it's never, it goes from here to where they end up in the story. It's always this slow path of over the years, they slowly turn the screw to get them down. It's the same thing that happens with our society now. And I think why that matches up with what she's talking about with it being under the spell is like, you don't see a big falling off the cliff and they played their hand a little too hard for the same reason that in those stories you always see it kind of an over time frame where they slowly get crazier and crazier and crazier until they're on the street and don't trust cars. Like
Yeah.
it's never just falling off of a cliff. Sometimes, I shouldn't say never. Sometimes you do hear those stories, but they're very rare in comparison to they start out logical and then you see it dive down.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where another place where shadow work comes in, because I mean, what it comes down to is a lot of these humans who do end up in these deceptive relationships with entities get a thrill out of being chosen, get a thrill out of feeling special. Like, oh, Sekhmet wants to talk to me. I must be such a powerful magician if Sekhmet is personally in contact with me, right? And like, as spiritual seekers, we always have to be checking ourselves that we're not getting full of ourselves, because that's what makes us, ironically, that's what makes us the most susceptible to this kind of deception, to think that it could never happen to me, right? Because I'm too smart or I'm too powerful. It's like the moment you start thinking that is actually when it's most likely to happen to you.
Yeah, you light up like a beacon on the astral plane, like they say. Like as soon as you start thinking like that, the low levels are like, "Oh, this guy's gonna be easy. He thinks he's all that and a bag of
Mhm.
chips. All right, yeah, we got this guy."
Start getting your woo woo boner going, and they're like, "Yep, that's him. Go fuck him."
So yeah,
Yeah.
I did want to get into some dream stuff. So this is great stuff too. I love all this talk, and we could probably do like fucking 5 shows with you about all this different stuff. But
I'd love to.
this is our introduction to Alicen Gray, your debut on the bat. So I want to cover a couple other things. The dream thing. Tim from Australia in our Telegram is going to be very, very excited. He's probably going to have a massive boner about this. But the dream stuff, get us going on some dream stuff, because that's been a favorite topic among listeners as well.
Okay, let me tell you the first time I ever started to see that dreams are not just movies in your head. I was in high school, and this was around a time I was having a massive spiritual awakening. I experienced so many things at age 17 that like I don't know how else to explain it, except my entire energy field just like blossomed open. I was so sensitive. I was having paranormal experiences on a regular basis. And one of the many things that happened that year was I had this very vivid dream, uncharacteristically vivid at the time, because I hadn't started doing dream work or recall. So I was in a space where I thought dreams were just kind of random and meant nothing. But in this dream, I was wearing all black leather. I had this huge machine gun. And I was with this guy who I don't know, but this guy next to me, he was like pale skin, black hair, also wearing all black leather, also had a machine gun. And he and I were like a team, and we were like doing parkour off of these city buildings and like shooting a bunch of zombies. There was like swarms of zombies on the streets, and everything was red. The buildings were red, the sidewalks were red, the sky was red. It was very movie-like.
Clearly on
So
Mars.
yeah, and I woke up and I remembered that dream because it was so weird for me to have such a vivid dream. And then later that day, I went to school and I talked with this acquaintance of mine named Kitty, and like we had never really talked before, so it was like that's why it like stood out in her mind. She was like, "Oh my God, I had a dream about you last night." I was like, "Yeah, what happened?" She proceeded to describe the same exact dream, detail for detail, but from her vantage point. So she was watching me and this guy with our machine guns shooting at a bunch of zombies, jumping off of buildings, and everything was red, and she described everything perfectly. I was in shock because I hadn't told anybody about my dream. And that was the first time I knew, okay, this is something. This is something worth looking into. So then I started getting into reading lucid dreaming forums. And this was back when the internet was like, we had forum culture. And I also feel like back then it was easier to find this stuff. Like I feel like with the um agenda to like gaslight all of humanity on every front, suddenly it's very hard to find legitimate anecdotes or even video or photographic evidence of paranormal things. It's like
100%.
it's like being buried alive. So
Well, and
I
now
remember
there's
back.
AI too, so you can't
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
the algorithms have slowly and sometimes fast been turned into you. They even propagate other links so that it gets buried. Like when you have 18 million results and 9 million of them have just been algorithmically populated so
Yeah.
that it buries, even farther what you're looking for.
Yeah, which is why I think we should come back to a talk about how to seek and find spiritually so that even search engines can't block you from finding things. But I'll talk about that later. But when I started reading lucid dreaming forums, I discovered that there were people who had become so skilled at deciding where they were going to go in their dream that they would coordinate group meetings in the astral plane. So these people on this forum would be like, all right, how about we visit the moon tonight? And then they'd all report back the next day and describe their experiences, and they would like often match up and stuff. And I remember, I shouldn't have said moon because actually it was this one that was unusual. They tried to visit the moon, and the next day all the posts from everybody were like, I tried to land on the moon, but there was this like force field, or like I got bounced back to earth, like I wasn't allowed to land on the moon, like something's blocking it. And that got me started on like, wait, what is the moon? So now I don't believe the moon is real and stuff
It's
like
a
that. But
hologram or something.
it's something. It's just not, I don't like it. I know that for sure.
And that's not even getting into the flat earth thing. I mean, this is a tangent all on its own, but I love that idea. Most of the people now in this community, even if they aren't flat earthers, are like, something's off with the moon. I don't think anybody's ever put their foot, a human has ever put their foot on the moon, because I don't think you can. I don't think it's a dust ball or whatever. Like, we don't, that's the biggest thing, is that nobody really knows what it is. They're just like, we're convinced it's fake and gay. It's probably
but people
fake
are
and
like
gay.
married to the idea that whatever the science says is real. That's what bothers me, is that people are like, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson says the moon is
Oh,
this,
fuck that
so
guy.
I have
Oh my
to
God.
believe that. The same as the people who trust the government and the pharmaceutical companies. It's
Well,
Yeah, NASA is a social engineering operation. They exist to push the idea that we are a cosmic accident, that we were not created with a purpose, that our lives have meaning, we're floating in the void, like we're
all
just
alone.
insignificant. Yeah, and like people lap this shit up like, yeah, tell me how meaningless I am. I love it. And it's sad. It's so sad, like, cuz what I love about flat earth theory is like, whether or not you take it to be literally true, I think symbolically what it does to accept that the bodies of light, the sun and the moon, are local, is that it makes light not something out of our reach, but something like right there, something that is friendly to us, not something that is like capable of killing us from millions of miles away like the sun is, and or like in the heliocentric model. So I actually wrote a whole article about that on my Substack, about how like the theory of Earth's shape, it's whatever you choose to believe about it brings you to the dimension where that's true. So I see the shape of the Earth debate as one that progresses from like what NASA says, which is that, we're a cosmic accident in the void and the sun is so far away and we're all alone. And then you progress to like flat Earth, where the sources of light that give us life are closer to us, and it's a more habitable, more purposeful place in the world or in the universe. And then you move on to like inner Earth, which is where the light is actually inside you. And the way to access inner Earth is like internally through like going inward into the astral or into the etheric realms or whatever, however you think that it happens. But it's more of a sense of Earth being hyperdimensional and something that you can travel to from within your own body. You don't need a spacecraft or a boat to like cross the ice wall. It's all in here. And so I'm trying to get to that place where I can like travel that easily between dimensions, but I'm not
That
quite
would
there
be great.
yet.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
It would.
so before we move on to something else, because we haven't talked about it yet on the show. Two things. One, what you just said plays into even why like the Bible occasionally calls, in my opinion, why the Bible will occasionally call the Son of God the capital S-U-N, and it interchanges that. So I think that has to do with that, and that's kind of like a throw to us, like, hey guys. But the second question I had is, with all this, moon is fake and super gay, what is your opinion on this whole April 8th eclipse?
Oh shit!
Ooh.
Divergent, real quick. We
No,
got
I
Yeah,
love this.
I got to get
It's
an
coming
answer
up.
from you on this.
I love this because the ancient Vedic astrologers used to discourage people from watching eclipses, from even being exposed to the phenomenon of the sky turning dark because of Rahu's ignorance. So in Vedic astrology, there's the 7 classical planets from the sun to Saturn, and then there's Rahu and Ketu, the shadow planets, which are the nodes of the moon. So this is really interesting that the moon even in ancient astrology was acknowledged to be like a demonic force of ignorance. It wasn't necessarily something to like. So, and I believe from connecting dots across different traditions that the study of the lunar mansions was actually the study of how souls get sorted based on their karma, because the moon has been understood by many ancient cultures to be a soul, like a reincarnation center where
So
like
it's the hat from Harry Potter. It's
the
sorting
sorting
everybody
hat.
into
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so it kind of like determines where your soul incarnates next. But in order for it to even do that, you have to be in a state of unconsciousness. Like people who are conscious upon dying and know that they have free will and that they're sovereign don't tend to go towards the light because they know the light is inside them. So they don't fall for that light trap. And that's a whole conversation, like tricked by the light. I could talk about that for hours. But to go back to the eclipse, so in Vedic astrology, the nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu, the way they came to be is that this dragon, and I'm forgetting the name of this dragon wanted to drink the soma of immortality, and believed, I guess, that the only way to get this soma of immortality was to steal it from the gods. So this dragon waited around for the gods to kind of like not be paying attention, and then snuck in and started drinking the soma. And in that moment, one of the gods caught on to what was happening, immediately cut this dragon's head off from its body. So before the soma could get digested, the dragon ended up being decapitated, and as a punishment for this deceptive act and trying to cheat its way towards immortality instead of learning through its own experiences and gain and like earning it, they threw the head of the dragon to one end of the sky, and that became Rahu. And then the body of the dragon was thrown to the other opposite end of the sky, and that was Ketu. And so the myth of like basically all of Vedic astrology rests on this myth that the whole purpose of the soul's evolution is to reconnect one's head with one's body, which is to become conscious of what is unconscious. And how do I explain this? Rahu being too cerebral and too in your head is what causes you to be consumptive and go looking in the world for answers and looking out into the world for power and whatever you think will satisfy you. But without the connection to the stomach, you can't digest those experiences. You can't digest that knowledge. So it stays theoretical. Whereas when you're able to connect to your body and your own lived experience, that is when you're able to digest that soma and actually access immortality in a very real way. So that's really the goal of, I guess you could argue, any spiritual practice, is making the unconscious conscious, which requires you to own that you're sovereign and that you're an agent, and you don't have to steal power from others. You have it within you already. So as it pertains to the eclipse, now to actually make the point, what happens during an eclipse is Rahu eats the sun for a moment in time. And this is a byproduct of Rahu's ignorance of Rahu's own power. Like if Rahu knew it already had the power of immortality inside of its own body, and if it would just reconnect to itself with Ketu and become complete again, it would not need to eat the sun. And so basically the idea in Vedic astrology is that eclipses only happen because of ignorance. And that is like demonic in origin. You know, it's the commitment to staying in darkness. And so all of that is to say, I'm gonna try not watching the eclipse this time and actually, like, you know, not see it as like mystifying and cool, but actually appreciate that, wait a second, this is in a way against the natural order. Like this is sort of like a consequence of being in this lower dimension on Earth is that we have eclipses. And if we were more conscious as a race, it's possible that eclipses wouldn't happen, at least according to the way Vedic astrology posits it, that there may not be a moon, there may not be Rahu, the demonic, like light-eating force. There would be no urge to eat and destroy light at all if we were more conscious. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
What do you think about eclipses? Like, do you think the moon plays any part in it? Because I know a lot of people that are like, I don't think the moon has anything to do with eclipses. I don't know what that is, but it's not the moon.
It's Rahu. I watched a video where somebody showed like a frame by frame video close up of the eclipse happening. And there's this moment where you can see that what we think of as the moon completely disappears at the moment that of the total eclipse. And what's left is just a void. Like the moon is not there anymore. And so that is what is referred, like that's what people are talking about when they talk about Rahu, just this void of hunger, that this like cosmic black hole of hunger that will eat anything, including the sun. And I could send you the video and show you the moment where she shows like frame by frame that like the moon disappears, and it's not even the moon eclipsing the sun, it's Rahu. It's very, very fascinating.
Interesting. So the moon has to be close-ish. So the moon is kind of there, and then Rahu kind of comes in.
I guess, or like it could be that the moon doesn't exist. I mean, we know it's fake. Like we're so casual about it. Yeah, so the moon is fake. So what's actually happening during eclipses?
Fuck 'em.
I
Well, who
don't
knows?
know.
I don't know what reality is, so I'm open to talk about anything.
Yeah, me too. I guess this is just one of those moments where I'm gonna say I don't entirely know, but I know that the moon seems to be maybe a coagulation of illusion, or like a symbol of illusion in this realm, and it seems to be very tied to unconsciousness and deception. And so I think even just in the way that it behaves, it is very deceptive. It makes you think it's there when it's not there, and it's very complicated. But yeah, I just the come away is that I don't trust the moon at all.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hate it.
especially since the
That's fair.
not to, bang on pagans too much, but like the moon is like one of the main things in paganism. Like that's worshipped as the goddess, and the moon seems to be more like a timepiece, if nothing else. It's like it keeps track of, and that's in line with Bible teaching too. That the sun, moon, stars are there for signs and seasons, and a clock. That's why they call it the sky clock. It's a clock up there, and it's very, very finely tuned, and you can call it by the day, like where everything's gonna be. So I don't know what the part the moon plays in that, but it has something to do with all of that.
One of the theories I have is that there's a true moon, and the moon is like covering it or like distracting us from it, because I have a friend who I believe her. She claims that she saw the second sun while she was driving home one day. She said it was like really dark. It was getting dark, and then she looked up out of her window while she was driving, and she said the moon looked so bright that you couldn't even see the features of the moon. Like it wasn't marked the way that we think of the moon. It was just this ball of light. And she was like, whoa, what is that? So she just started following it. Like she just forgot she was driving home and started following the moon instead. And as she was following it, she looked into another part of the sky and saw the moon there. And she was like, wait a second. So what have I been following this whole time? I thought that was the moon, and it was just really uncharacteristically bright. But in that moment, she kind of realized that, like, oh, maybe this is like the midnight sun people talk about, or like there's ancient myths that there were two suns. And I tend to believe that, because even when you test that out on the astrology wheel and you replace the moon as the ruler of Cancer with a second sun, it completes the wheel in a way that like the moon can't. The moon throws the astrology wheel into imbalance. And when you instead treat it like Leo and Cancer are both ruled by the sun, but just two different suns, it makes way more sense. Yeah, so I think it's possible that the moon is almost like an insert, like the same way we talked about screen memories. It's almost like it's a giant like screen that covers the true lesser light to rule the night, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been so many different, legends and myths and whatever about the moon, and a lot of them say that the moon is artificial. Whether that means it's a big artificial rock that somebody put up there, if you want to believe the space model, whatever, or if it's literally a projection or a hologram or something covering something else. The second sun thing is really interesting because there are binary systems. If you want to believe science, there are binary star systems. So it's not that far out to think that maybe ours is too. And we have two suns, and, go as far as you want with that. I mean, Google's a big rabbit trail. You can find whatever you want there, or things you don't want.
Oh yeah, I once watched a really interesting conversation that honestly, it was one of those things that like awakens something in you when you hear it. The conversation was about how humans are not naturally designed to be compatible with darkness. And the reason we are scared of the dark, or, are like blind in the dark, is because it's not natural to us, which suggests that at some point in our development, in our history, there wasn't a period of darkness every day. It was just light all of the time. And that's where the second sun comes in. The binary star idea that we're always bathed in light at some point in our history. And at some point the moon came along and kind of like, and this actually kind of fucks up my love of astrology, because if it's true that there's that, like, ideally we have a second sun and no periods of darkness, then the light of the stars, if you weren't able to see them, they would just become irrelevant. And it's interesting. I find it challenging because I have found like a real love of studying astrology. I've had a lot of good experiences with it, but I wonder how that would change. That entire system would change and become maybe totally irrelevant if we were to invite in the idea of a second sun instead of a moon ruling the night and not have night at all. All I know is I
we
love
still
that
could see
idea.
the stars, though. We might be able to see them in a different way. Because if we're, just say, like with the flat earth theory, if the sun and the moon were local and we weren't just a ball floating in space, then the stars aren't balls floating in space either. They're something else. So maybe with the second sun, it would bring out maybe a different frequency or energy, not to use new agey weird terms, but it might just look different. And maybe that's why those constellations were shaped that way from people way back in the day, because they had two suns and they could see it way more clearly.
Oh my God. Wait, I got goosebumps from that. I love that theory. You're right. They were seeing like images in the sky probably from before everything went dark. I love that. Because when you look at vintage astrology maps, there's all these like Pegasus and the Minotaur, and like they see all these elaborate images apparently in the sky that I'm like, where are you seeing that? Like, where are you getting that from? But that makes so much sense.
The ancient astrologers were the ultimate conspiracy theorists because they were literally drawing lines between points that just like, what the fuck? Like the Big Dipper. That's not a bear. That's a soup ladle. Come on, look at it.
That's the Big Dipper is my favorite constellation because it just looks exactly like what it is. It's the only one.
I know we're diverging a lot too, but this is
Yeah,
kind of
sorry.
relevant. I love asking people this question about the way that the stars turn around Polaris nonstop. Like the time lapse. I'm sure you've seen the time lapse pictures of just circling around Polaris. No matter like where you are, it's always doing that. How does that work if we're spiraling through the galaxy at millions of miles an hour in every possible direction? How does that work? How does science describe that? Because I've never heard a good explanation for that.
I don't think there is. I think that the whole purpose of NASA and all of these space agencies literally is to deceive. I mean, apparently, I hope I don't get this wrong, but Nasha in Hebrew, NASA means to deceive. And so the acronym NASA is like really questionable when you look at like compilations of NASA getting caught using CGI for their so-called live streams from space. Like
The
there's
space station, yeah.
yeah, the so-called space station. There's you can see moments where people glitch out from the frame, and like it's clear that they're using augmented reality technology, and it's simulated, and there's no live feed giving us footage from space. It's just people in front of a green screen, and you can prove it. Like it's so provable, and that's something that gets buried real deep. Every time I find a NASA video of like people pointing out like the glitches in NASA footage, I can't find it like a day later. It's like it's gone as soon as it appeared. So you have to like actually, I'm trying to get into the habit of like saving videos manually, like recording them and keeping them on my computer before they disappear.
Well, that's why they love fucking with things like BitChute and Rumble and all these alternative platforms that don't really pull things immediately. Can't speak for all of them. They're probably all infiltrated too. Who knows? But wait, when you see all these other things, it's so easy to pass those off from the mainstream perspective because they're like, this is some stupid QAnon fucking, 4chan thing, and they're just full of shit and whatever. Even though they pulled the video from a supposedly live feed from the NASA website. I think they stopped doing that for a bit too. I think there was a period where NASA stopped live streaming because they were like, we're getting pointed at a lot.
They stopped
lately.
going to the moon too, apparently, because they lost
They
the
lost
technology.
the technology.
No, but in the last like 6 months, we've had how many people go to the moon and just land little dinky little like Lego toys on the moon?
Well, they did send crash test dummies to the moon just to make sure they could make it through the Van Allen belt or whatever. Yeah, that's weird. Why would you do that now? Since so many
After you
people have
send
been
people-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably should have done that 40, 50, 60 years ago.
I know,
When you
but
look
they say things like that, and we just are like, yeah, that makes sense. But when people go back and dig in and say, well, hold on, people went and asked the question, they're like, oh no, you don't understand. It's the science.
What I understand is that NASA makes a lot of money, so there's a lot at stake for them to just not answer these basic questions.
Yeah.
They use a lot of helium too, and I doubt it's just for the Munchkin voice. I think they're doing something else with all that helium.
They're probably doing that a little bit, though.
So before we'll close out here in a little bit here, 10, 15 minutes. But
we have to have you on again, though.
We didn't
This was so
really
much fun.
get into
I feel like
dreams.
we didn't even. I know.
Classic Bat style. We were like, how about dreams? How about fucking anything
I
else
know.
besides
Sorry,
dreams?
we
Tim,
rabbit
I'm
trail.
sorry. Get into some weird dream stories you've had, and I know you pulled up a couple, but like, what's some of the, I don't know, your favorite aspects of lucid dreaming and all that stuff? Because I would love to be able to lucid dream, but I only can do it on accident. And it's weird when it happens, and everybody's going to know what I'm talking about when you have that one weird dream that not only sticks with you all fucking day, but you were, for all intents and purposes, somewhere else. Like, I was not
I know. I
at
tell you
home
about my
sleeping
dreams
that
all the
day.
time. I'm always like, babe, I went to a
No, I
different
went
dimension.
to, it was
Yeah.
so intricate and detailed, and I could read words, which they say you can't do in dreams, which I'm calling bullshit on.
No,
you can read in dreams.
Yeah.
I've smelled in dreams.
I've
Everything.
tasted in dreams.
Yeah, I was there. I was in this other fucking thing, and then it takes me a minute to acclimate to this dimension once I wake up, because I'm like, whoa, I was just
I'm so glad you've gotten here because it
somewhere
took
else.
you so long to get to a place. I would tell him about my dreams all the time, and he's like, I don't even dream. Very rarely. And now he's big into dreams.
Good.
Because we keep dream journal. Do you write your dreams down now, right?
No, I should.
Wow. You have to
Oh.
because your brain forgets them.
No, I've always
Yeah,
had weird dreams. I've talked about it on the show where I've had, like, not precog, but kind of like, it was more like a figuring things out in my dreams, but it was weird because the answer came to me in a dream and it fucking worked the next day. Like, stuff like that. But as far as your experience, like, what, I'm sure you keep a dream journal because you seem
Oh,
much more organized than I am.
I use an app called Awoken, and you can write down your dream. It's great. It'll give you reminders throughout the day, like little sounds that happen at random intervals where you can do a reality check in real life, so that when you hear that same sound overnight, it's supposed to trigger your impetus to do a reality check while you're dreaming. So it's like lucid dreaming training. So you
Is
can
it like
also
looking
write
at
down
your hand? Or like trying to stick your hand through you?
any reality check you want. All I do when I hear the little sound go off is say, I'm dreaming right now and I can control it. And I take a moment to actually believe that whenever I do it. Because it's not enough to just say it. You have to, like, this is the part that freaks people out and makes them not want to do dream work. I actually do practice blurring the lines between dreams and reality, but like as a spiritual pursuit. So I'm at a point now where life really does feel like a dream a lot of the time. And I'm not scared. Like, I'm not scared. I don't know what people are scared of. I don't feel like I'm losing my grip with reality or anything. It's more that the more you practice
That might not
lucid
be
dreaming,
bad.
no, yeah, because the more you practice lucid dreaming and you know you're in control of what happens, that just carries over into waking life, where whenever you start to feel like life is very dreamy, it shouldn't scare you if you know that you have control over your thoughts. And if you can change whatever you're thinking about and change what you're feeling, you're going to be fine. Like, nothing can hurt you. Just like in a lucid dream, if you're having a nightmare, you can decide that you're not having a nightmare anymore. And it happens that fast. So, and one more thing I'll say about the Awoken app. I'm not even sponsored by them or anything. I just love them so much. When you write down your dreams, you can add your own hashtag. So within the dream journal, you can like search the hashtag of all your past dream entries and see how often you dreamed of like hashtag snakes or like hashtag horses or whatever. So that's how you can track patterns in your dreams and see which symbols are particularly important to your psyche. So one thing I will say about more like advanced dream work is that I have recently had this big breakthrough where I realized what's just as important as interpreting the dream is interpreting your relationship to the dream. So, for example, for 2.5 years now, I have been having occasional dreams of a particular man who, like, had a very specific face, a very specific energy. And so over that amount of time, I had so many different theories about who this man was. Like, are we soulmates? Is he someone from another dimension, someone from a past life? So my diamond, or whatever they call it, like my own personal unconscious, like taking a human form, like, and then one day I decided to step back, and instead of getting so invested in the dream, I was like, what if what I decide about him is what matters more than who he actually is? And what if I can like let go of this attachment to figuring out the mystery, or assuming that he has some sort of what's the word? Some sort of existence beyond my control. Like I don't know how, I've never actually tried to articulate this because this is a very recent epiphany, but basically I
What would they
realized
call
I was
that? It's on the tip of my
egregore?
tongue too. Its own. What would you call that?
I would say, so I wouldn't call it anything. I don't have anything on the tip of my tongue, but I would say like you're thinking of it as someone who's out of your reach, someone who you have to meet, someone who has some impact on your life that's meaningful to you, instead of just something that's out of your creation, or something that's really, or maybe possibly insignificant.
Yeah, it was like that, where I felt like, oh, I have to figure out this mystery. And at some point it started to feel kind of like torment, like, why am I not getting any closer to any answers? Like, I hate this. I don't want to dream about this anymore. And then when I decided to step back and see that this, oh, actually I remember now what the turning point was. The thing that was important about him was that my first dream about him was that I saw him busking, like playing music on the sidewalk, and the sun was shining behind him and he was so glorious, and I was like, wow, I hope he's real. I hope that we make music together one day. That would be so cool. And proceeded to have many dreams of us like making music together and like stuff like this. So that was why it was so important for me to figure this out, because I am a musician and my journey has been to get back on stage. I haven't been on stage in like 12 years. It's a whole thing. So I was talking about it with someone who doesn't really know a lot about dreams recently, and he suggested, like, the way that someone who like has no stake in it just can casually say something profound and it like blows your mind. He was like, what if he's just a disowned part of yourself that you're supposed to reintegrate? I was like, oh my God. So he's not some guy in a parallel dimension. He's just me. And I've been like I've been putting him on this pedestal like he's not just me. And so then I started looking at him like, wait, this is just my own inner musician wanting expression, but relegating that expression to the land of the subconscious, where it's safe and where no one's actually going to see me performing, right? And so once I did that, suddenly I had this breakthrough where, like, wait a second, it's not hard to be on stage. It's not hard to perform in front of people. I can do this. Obviously, if my mind can generate it in a dream, I can do it in real life. And that's the value of like blurring that line between dreams and reality. If you can do it in a dream, you can do it in real life, and that includes flying and everything else we've talked about so far. So yeah, I recently have really deeply committed to getting back on stage and performing, and it's actually been so much easier now that I've had that breakthrough. It's like, oh yeah, singing in front of people, of course I can do this because I can do it in a dream. So
Nice. Oh, so the word I was thinking of is, you were thinking of him as somebody who has his own agency and not as a part of yourself.
like an egregore or
Yeah,
token or
yeah.
something?
Like
Yeah.
his own
Something separate
consciousness or
from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I realized he's not, that it's just me, it's like, oh, okay. So that's one way that the unconscious mind attempts to reintegrate, by like playing these different characters, wearing these different masks, and like we project our own self onto others until we realize like, oh, they're me. And like I think through that experience I can see why some people who you might call enlightened or awakened say that at the highest levels of awareness, everything is one. Like there's no others, it's all just you. And there's one unified field of consciousness that plays these different characters in like a cosmic drama, but ultimately it's all one consciousness. And it's like I can barely even rationalize that. But in that moment with that dream man, I think I got it experientially. Like, oh, okay, I think I know what they mean now.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, like the truth thing, there is objective truth, but there also is subjective reality. Everything's viewed through your own lens, and that's something you said truth can't be learned, and you can't teach somebody what you know, really, because you're feeling it yourself in your own body, and that's really all that matters. Like, that's why nobody should be worried about shoving their beliefs down other people's throats, because they're not going to see it the same way. You can tell them everything. You can go to church every week, and it's going to mean something different to every single person in that congregation. So
Mhm.
stop. It always comes back to just don't be a dick. Stop being a dick. Just do your thing.
Yeah,
Can we
treat
get? Can
everyone
we all get
as
along?
divine. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you brought that up because that ties back to something I said I was going to mention later, so I'll just mention it now. There's a lot of fear these days about information being lost and cover-ups of different agendas and like, trying to keep people ignorant. But the wonderful thing is, and I've learned this especially since COVID, like I've learned over and over again through direct experience that if you ask a question in your soul, you don't even have to ask it out loud. You can just have the internal experience of curiosity and genuinely wanting to know something. If you have any question at all, it will be answered. It could be answered through a dream. It could be answered through a chance meeting with a stranger. It could be answered through like a synchronistic lyric on the radio playing at the right moment. Like that's the beauty of being a unified field of consciousness. Truth cannot be hidden. We're infinite and we can access any knowledge from anywhere at any time. Nothing can limit us from finding the truth if we're seeking it. So I would just say to anyone watching who's kind of like in the habit of being afraid of the bad guys winning or like keeping the masses ignorant, like I would just remind everyone that like psychic insight is very much a thing and it is reliable, and you just have to give yourself permission to trust your own psychic insight. There's a reason there's an agenda to make people believe psychics are bullshit. It's because we all are psychic. And I don't even mean in the Sylvia Brown type of way. I mean like we all have the capacity to find any information from going within. You don't need a certain education. You don't need authorities or doctors or anyone to tell you what the truth is. You can find it internally. So that's just one thing I love to remind people. If you're ever curious about anything, like you don't have to worry about finding the right sources and like finding the right websites and hoping the video doesn't get lost. Like everything you could ever need to know and everything you want to know, you can find just by asking the question, and then like the answer will be like magnetized to you by way of that process.
You don't even need a life coach.
I actually do. It's funny though, I was about to mention that I do have a course where I do teach that, like how to ask a question in the most optimal way to receive answers. Because I think a lot of people don't even know how to ask a question. I think people know how to ask loaded questions or um uh sort of like devil's advocate questions or antagonistic questions, but the power of questions as a means of finding and seeking truth is really underexplored. And so I have a course about that on my site, and Symbol Speak, which touches on like the reality is a dream thing that I was talking about a few
Nice.
minute ago. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people are looking for answers without even know how to ask the question in the first place, and
Mhm.
I'm no
Hey, at least they're
no
looking.
exception to that.
Yeah.
But I am trying. Well, Allison, anything else you want to plug? Your website will put all your notes into the show notes, or all your links into the show notes rather. And did you want to end on one of your songs? Because I talked to you about this
Oh,
when we booked
yeah.
you.
You
Did
know
you figure
what?
out a song you want?
Sure. Yeah, I have a music video I made for my latest album, Ugly, and it's full of paranormal footage that I had to seek and find, and I did find, and so I made sure it will never get lost on the internet again, which I want to mention quickly. I included a bunch of footage of people levitating, and when I paid a promoter to like run ads for the music video, he reported back to me that YouTube decided to limit the scope of the ad reach because of potentially disturbing content for children.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, watching people levitate is potentially disturbing to children.
Probably because
So,
they're the ones who could probably do it the easiest.
yes,
I was gonna
they
say,
do
okay,
that.
Disney.
They do it. Yeah, I've heard so many parents say that their kids like will run up to them and say, "Mommy, I flew down the stairs," and like it for real. When I was a kid, I know for sure I knew I had powers. I just knew, and there were times where I'm pretty sure I did experience them. In adulthood, I have experienced certain psionic things like telekinesis. I woke up
That shit
levitating
got beat out of
once.
you real quick, didn't it?
In the religious realm, actually. I was raised Pentecostal, and in a weird way, I rebelled against it, of course, but now that I look back on it with some distance, I can appreciate that Pentecostalism is actually very mystical. Like
yeah.
they are very big on like psychic abilities, and I think maybe my soul chose that experience of like being born into a Pentecostal church because they do preserve like practices that activate your psychic abilities, which is really interesting. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So what's the title of that song?
So the song is called Pleroma. I'm sure Gnostics will appreciate.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and my artist name is When Humans Had Wings.
All right, and that'll all be in the show notes. But if unless YouTube's gonna ding me, I'll put the music video on the end of this if you want. If that
Oh
works out.
yeah, I would
Okay,
love
cool.
that.
And then obviously for the audio listeners, the audio will play for this as well. But if you want to see the video, go to her YouTube, and we'll include links for that too. Thank you so much.
Yay. Yeah, thank you. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
and we'll have you on for
you.
around 2, 3, 4. You'll
yeah.
probably be a recurring guest at this point because there's so much more we could talk about, and maybe next time we can get more pointed with different areas if there's
I know
something
we're
you're
like, oh,
working
let's
on.
talk about architecture, and then we just went off in like 1,000 different directions.
I
Like,
knew it wasn't gonna last.
We sort of touched on everything. This was like the outline for how our next conversations will go. We'll just have to make it a little more
Yeah.
pointed and try to stay on topic.
Yeah, we can
We're
put
not good
bullet
at that,
points and then
but-
not stick to them at all.
We
It'll be great.
somehow didn't talk about ghosts or cryptids or like, but see, there's so much more we could talk about and get all tangled up in. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love talking.
Hell yeah.
For sure.
Well, thank you, Allison. Thanks, Ben.
you.
Thanks, Jen. Ben, you look very tired. You can go to night-night now.
Pretty soon.
You have my permission,
Oh my
okay?
goodness.
Thanks
and
It's
for-
attention
7:15,
before
old
you
man.
dream.
Thanks for coming on, Alice. I don't dream. Thanks for coming on, Allison. It was really nice to meet you.
You too.
All right, thanks everybody on Rockfin, YouTube, and audio. We will see you next week.
Out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. What you see is what you get. If you want it like that, then ask for me and mine. We follow the signs. For those with no fear, the path becomes clear, leading us back to something divine.
Thank you for listening to Legit Bad. Please address all content grievances to gofuckyourself@yourmom.com. See you next week.